Welcome to Trudge the Road. We're your hosts. I'm Rich, a recovered drug addict.
I'm Jerry, sober alcoholic. Great to be here.
And we want to thank our sponsor this show, livefrogged.com. Livefrogged.com. Frogged means firmly relying on God's grace every day.
It's a wonderful website dedicated to women with breast cancer. Brian, we love you. Thank you for being a part of our program.
Absolutely. You buy a T-shirt on there, and a portion of the proceeds go to women with breast cancer.
Our program here is about alcoholism and drug addiction. We're going to talk to folks who have the problem, folks who are related to or love somebody who is an addicted person. We know that you've got tons and tons of questions. Everybody does. We're going to do our best to bring you some answers. And, of course, our ultimate goal is hopefully help you find solutions to our issues. And for you folks in the recovering community who are listening, it's as good as a meeting. Just enjoy.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the big things that if you know someone who's currently in the throes of their addiction is that they like to make a lot of excuses. And I know I made a lot of why I wasn't going to stop.
Yeah, well, be careful here. I'll put you in the corner, man.
So what I'm going to do is to just collectively throw some of the ones that I know that you've heard. If you have someone at home that has a drinking issue or somebody that's using drugs.
You're going to use the exact words, man. Here we go.
And all I did was replay my life and come up with them. I'm not that bad.
Oh, man, one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's when you minimize, downplay the problems connected with your addiction. All I want is a little relief.
Just a minute of relief.
I just want to get some relief. And, of course, at that time, I'm an addict. I'm feeling victimized. My life is so tough. I'm not hurting anybody but myself, one I've recently heard.
Yeah, that's the one I used frequently. Hey, I'm not bothering you. This is killing me, but it doesn't affect you, so leave me alone.
Of course, and what it does is invokes that legalistic right to go ahead and harm oneself, which is not really true as well. I've just got to be me. You knew this when we got together. You knew this when we got married.
Emotional blackmail.
Yeah, so, that's when the addict, unable to distinguish themselves from addiction, starts to go ahead and say, hey, look, this is me. This is the way it is, and I'm not making any changes. Mm-hmm. Just three more that I want to throw your way. You're not so pure yourself, where you turn the tables on whoever's accusing you or one that's trying to talk to you.
Expert here.
Yeah, and I can stop anytime I want to. That was one that was always floating around when I was in a relationship many years ago, and we were both deep in our throes of addiction, and I was trying to, at that time, hey, look, we've got an issue. Let's see if we can't I can stop anytime I want to. Well, why don't you stop then? Well, because I don't want to.
Yeah, I don't want to. Yeah. If I wanted to, I would, but I don't want to.
And there's also the one that it says that I'm not nearly as bad as other people that we throw out there. So that's a collection of some of the excuses that perhaps you've heard.
Oh, yeah. or used, and I'm certainly, you could attach my name to any of them that you brought up. But, the point is that they're lies. They're really, I believe, when I would say that, I'm not that bad. Again, the old put the lie detector on me, and I bet it would come up truth because I believed that. But this rationalization is a process to try to make you see things our way. That's the ultimate goal. And these lies become a mechanism of our survival. And it can take you, from the boardroom to unemployed to where I was on the street because you survive on those lies. How would you like to take a trip with Jer on a typical day of being homeless in Louisville, Kentucky?
Oh, boy, I can't wait.
Would you like to go for a little ride here, Matt?
Let's all go for a nice little ride.
Buckle up, because we ain't coming back. I'll tell you, I promise you that. This, was my day as a homeless person, surviving. As you know, that I had two places that I lived. One was in a tree,
right,
which is still there. It's on a corner of 4th and Oak in Louisville, seedless ash, and behind the Ice House, which is what they call one of the recovery clubs in Louisville. There was an old beat up Mercury that somebody just left. I don't know. It was behind the club, and on rainy nights and stuff, or when it was cold, they'd let me sleep back in the back of this old car because to me, going to the missions wasn't really a good idea because they wouldn't let you drink and take drugs in there, and so I've got to find a place elsewhere. Well, anyway, in this means of survival, the first thing is, I would come 2 a.m. was to make sure that I had that refuge that I had left last night. I would always have, something because I would need a drink as soon as I woke up, if you will. And it's really not waking up, it's coming to. and I would have that, and then that would get me through to the point where I could go out immediately and begin to try and get more, whether that was conning somebody out of money or doing some little task to be able to pick up a lot of them. I only at the time, of course, this was years ago, needed about $5 to be able to get what I needed out of alcohol to last me for 24 hours. And it was a massive amount of alcohol. I was just drinking the cheapest vodka there was available. So there came other things, though. Now you know where I slept at night. How did I eat? This is one thing, was one of my favorites. There was a pizza place there in Louisville, a local pizza place, and I would call them up about 11:30 and place my order, and I would order something like, I'd like to have pineapple and lima beans, please, as a topping. Something I knew they couldn't pawn off on anybody else, And then I just go back by the dumpster and wait about 45 minutes for my pizza to be delivered, And that's how I would get, and to me that I'm not dumpster diving. I'm just, living creatively. I found out where, and it was Mr. Donut at the time. I don't know if it's still there downtown in Louisville, that, those donuts only are good for about 8 hours, and they got to get new donuts. So I knew like 1:45 was get rid of the old one time, and I'd just be at the back door with my bag, the trash bag, and load up on the stale donuts. They weren't stale, but the ones that they weren't going to sell.
Sure.
And I would tell everybody, I would tell those guys at the donut shop that I'm giving them to the poor. I'm giving these to the poor. I think they may have saw through me. And then I would, have these donuts. Now, what happened is now I'm the only homeless guy on the street who's fat, And then there was the why, and that they had a program for homeless people, and I would sometimes, now let's say it's about 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, it's time for me to clean up and have a relaxing hot tub, So I'd go over to the Y, and there'd be all these like businessmen, people with jobs and families and things of that nature, there to exercise and keep in good health. I'm there to literally take a bath, get cleaned up, and just throw my ugly booze-filled body right into your hot tub, and sit here for a while. Because it made me feel like I was somebody. It was feel good, And then it's back out on the streets, and now the nightmare is as soon as the sun comes down, that's when it's on, because I prefer really to function in the dark. And, that's when the drugs became available, and I would do as, what I had to do to survive. And I remember one of my great plans was to, there were a line of adult bars, if you will, topless bars.
Right,
And
right.
I came up with this great plan that I'd wait till about 3 o'clock in the morning, and as these drunk guys came out of these strip clubs, I'd rob them, because I didn't think they'd call the cops. What are you doing at a place like this, 3 o'clock in the morning? The only thing I didn't take into consideration, guys coming out of strip clubs at 3 o'clock in the morning never have any money. They'd almost laugh. Are you joking me? And I'd end up saying stuff like, "Give me your cigarettes, man." And so I even failed as a criminal. I mean, it was a complete failure. But it was that way over and over again. Now that's the insanity of the disease. Here I am, a person, who came from a good family, who has an education, who had a career, who was living like this because I'm now completely attached to only one thing, and that's staying high. As long as I was getting some food and I was getting plenty of what I needed, the alcohol and the drugs, and maybe if there was some girl involved in it periodically, that was all I was really interested in. And I certainly wasn't interested in you unless there was something from you that I could get.
I mean, for those stories that you just told, and,
Yeah.
and for a lot of people that are listening right now, are probably saying, wow, my goodness gracious, I would have hit my bottom long before that. But obviously, this was towards your bottom. What changed? What happened to you? How did it change for you that you weren't hanging outside of a strip club at 3 a.m. looking to rob somebody? What came into your life? What happened?
I fell out of that tree I was living in, to be honest with you. That's what happened. Let me tell you first about hitting bottom. When you hit bottom when you quit digging, And people out there right now thinking, geez, I didn't get that far. I didn't end up on Skid Row. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Listen to me carefully. Skid Row is a state of mind. And I don't care if you were sitting in a mansion on the beach. What was going on between your ears was the same thing that was going on in between my ears, laying in the back of that old Mercury behind the ice house in Louisville. It is the same. Skid Row, it's a state of mind. You have been there. Well, what happened to me was I was in my tree. Mind you, this is about close to 30 feet. And with that awful cheap vodka, I won't use the brand name, and whatever street drugs I had. It was June 30th, 1988. I'll tell you the date. And I'm up there drinking and feel safe up in this tree. And how the tree was, if you can imagine, my feet are on a branch. There's another branch that kind of behind that where I can sit on, and a branch behind that that I could lean back on. And frankly, it was pretty comfortable. And even if I passed out, I wasn't going anywhere. And one night, June 30th, 1988, apparently I had to go to the bathroom or something, and got up, and I forgot I lived in a tree, you know. And boom, down I went. It was the branches, snapping through the branches, that saved my life. As I hit the sidewalk, who was parked right there? The cops. 2 cops. Scared the heck out of them, you know, because they weren't looking for, you know, a big old drunk to fall out of the tree. As a matter of fact, she came up to me, the police officer, and that's the first thing she said to me. Did you fall out of that tree? You know, I believe I did, you know. And because, you know, my blood alcohol level, what was it when I got there? 3941 was outrageous, lethal. And I wasn't feeling anything. I didn't realize I had broken ribs and lacerations. I was torn to bits. All I thought about was the vodka in the tree. How am I going to get to that? And I'm trying to get up, and the police officer, bless her heart, she kept saying, no, stay down, you're hurt. And I promise you, I was doing the best I could to find the most polite words that I could find to get her to shimmy up that tree and grab me that vodka. You know, those words never came, thank you, God. What did happen is I ended up in a hospital, and that was the day that God, again, gave me the opportunity to become sober and join on this spiritual journey. The difference was this time I took it.
And here we are, all these years later.
Yeah.
And you're doing pretty darn good today.
Yeah, you know, life is not at all like I predicted it would happen. And, you know, it's still full of stress and all of the things that we feel, whether you're addicted or not, you know, and sometimes it's tough. But most of the time I'm happy, joyous, and free. And I just love that, you know. And the time of the year is coming up for me to be able to take a little vacation with my daughter and my son-in-law and my granddaughter. And, you know, I look so forward to those things that just so enrich my life, and the opportunity to be around people who are recovering too. And I dedicate my life to the 12-step of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I meet, you know, next time I've got to tell you about some of the characters who's in AA. You may be wondering, who are those people?
Why don't we do that coming up here?
I can tell you're going to love that, man.
We'll do that in our third segment.
Okay. I'm not going to give their names. Don't worry.
I didn't think you were. Yeah. But Dr. Joe, we'll give his name, is coming up here in the next segment, and then we'll get back to some of the people in AA.
Oh, my God,
And
yes.
then Dr. Joe
Beautiful
will be
people.
coming up as well. So some great stories, very compelling, intriguing stories. Once again, a big thank you to our sponsor, livefrogged.com. A lot of people might say, you know, frogged, what does that mean? Frogged like ribbit, frog? Yeah, frogged. Live frogged. Frogged means firmly relying on God's grace every day. He's a friend of ours. He started this website, and he has such good intentions at heart. His wife is a breast cancer survivor, so he came up with this concept, and he puts his T-shirts now on this website, and I've gone to the website and gotten a few myself, but portion of the proceeds from every T-shirt that he sells goes to help women with breast cancer.
He's absolute love. He is a true example of what love is, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Just being around him is an honor and certainly a pleasure.
Stick around. On the way, it continues. What? That's Trudge the Road.
You're listening to Trudge the Road. Coming up in our next segment, Dr. Joe joins Jerry to discuss credibility issues with the addicted person. And later, Rich and Jerry discuss AA and NA stereotypes. It's on the way next on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Trudge the Road. This is a radio program that is dedicated to folks who are suffering from the disease of addiction, who are addicted to alcohol and drugs. And we're here to also help the family and friends of those folks give you some answers to the many, many questions that you have, and we will do our best, I promise, to come up with solutions to this dilemma, and it is a bad one. Dr. Troncalli is with me. Dr. Joe Troncalli is a physician who is not addicted, but has chosen to help folks like us who are, and we deeply appreciate that. Trying to understand us and our behavior is just phenomenal. And in our last episode, we were talking about alcoholics and our inability to tell the truth.
Absolutely.
You could say we're liars, but it is our inability to tell the truth. And I wanted to, you're giving me permission to cite an example of my own behavior many years ago, but it's absolutely true. A big Irish Catholic wedding was taking place in my family, and lots of folks were coming to this event. And I'm about 20, 21 at the time, and I wanted to take my cousin who was getting married out for his, bachelor party. And to give you an idea how the reputation already in my family, he said, okay. And we went to our favorite tavern, and he excused himself to the men's room for a moment, and he just wasn't coming back. And what the heck's going on? And so I went into the men's room to find an open window, where he took his first opportunity to run away from what he knew was going to happen. And what, of course, you can predict what's going to happen when I start drinking, and I don't stop.
So he definitely knew exactly what was going to happen.
And he took the correct route. He's getting married the next day. That was the last person you should be around. And anyway, did that. And we were also involved with cocaine at the time. And it was pretty much an all-night affair and to like 4 o'clock in the morning. Now, the previous day, I had told my mother that I would help her prepare this family breakfast on the Saturday of the wedding. And I remember her saying, I'm holding you to that, So now I get home 4:30 in the morning. Well, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. She's kicking the beds. Get up. It's time to do this chore, boy. And oh, my God, I'm still drunk. And I get upstairs, and I'm doing the best I can, shuffling around. And she says to me, don't touch those donuts. Now, there's this pyramid of donuts that she's built it's for the family. Don't eat one, Well, the last thing in the world I wanted at this stage was a donut, Oh my God, I'm barely keeping what I've got in me down. And I got thinking, wait a minute, I know what would cure me is some more cocaine. And I thought, there's some downstairs. My cousins are all down there. We were all doing it. So I go downstairs and I start going through pockets. Jeans were just laying on the floor until, bingo, I found it. Got that euphoric recall right there, Doc. I pulled it out, went over to a desk, and I chopped up the cocaine and snorted it up. Now, as you know, I have a mustache right now. It's gray, but I had real black hair as a young man. And the cocaine made me feel a lot better. And I went upstairs, and I'm helping my mother put some plates out. And she asked me a question, and I turned to answer it. And I could, the look of disgust on her face, I can see it right now. And she said to me, I asked you not to do one thing, and you did it. And what? I said, don't eat those donuts. And I didn't touch a donut. The last thing I want, Mother, is I didn't eat the donut. And she comes over to me, Dr. Jill, with her finger in my face going, I hate about you. You lie. You've lied since the day you were able to talk. You're lying right now. And what had happened was that cocaine was in my mustache, this dark mustache, appearing as if I'd eaten one of those donuts. And this is the very first time in my life that I'm telling the truth, because I didn't. And it was all about, you lie, you lie, you lie. And then, of course, I see my reflection in the toaster and went, oh my God, okay, I wasn't going to tell her I was doing blow, I ate the donut, Mom. And then you lying little.
So you had to lie around not lying.
I had to lie around telling the truth, right. And that's just the case for so many of us. We just don't believe anything we say.
Well, again, that is part and parcel of the disease of addiction. If you hadn't been lying about that, you would have been lying about something else. And, it goes on and on and on. And that's why people that have the disease of addiction, especially when they are active in their addiction, learn early on that telling the truth generally doesn't get them what they want. And the good old lizard brain helps people to cover up all the things that they are ashamed of and all the things that they really don't want to be doing. I was looking at this book that's on your desk here. It's about the complete guide to executive manners, and they say in negotiations, never exaggerate because you lose your credibility. And so, again, the alcoholic addict really hasn't learned that skill. Exaggeration and lying and that sort of thing is just part of what goes on. And so nobody believes anything that you say. And even one of the problems for people once they get sober is that nobody believes you for a long time. It takes a long time to get your credibility back.
If I can cite an example with my father-in-law, Mr. Dickens, whom I dearly love, and he went through and saw what I was and what I was going to do, and in his opinion at that time, and his opinion was right, this man will be dead soon. He'll be dead soon. And I caused a lot of destruction that he witnessed. At about, 8 years sober, and as part of my program, I made amends to him. He'd heard me say I was sorry. I told him I was wrong, and he graciously accepted it. But I felt there was a feeling that, it just didn't connect, and it didn't, because he didn't believe it. He wanted to believe that this is 8 years sober, wanted to believe that I was going to be okay, but just couldn't. And those amends, as much as they were appreciated, really didn't feel them. And maybe they weren't legitimate. Maybe I wasn't ready at the time, that I was just acting. And now I'll go to at 12, 13, 14 years sober, after he had seen a complete and total change in me as a human being, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, he began to believe that I was going to be okay. And then he's a very spiritual man, a very religious man, watched my behavior change to the point where I wasn't so much interested in me. I was more interested in others, and not just in the sense of helping another alcoholic. I was just more interested in people. I wasn't that important anymore, and I didn't have that need to exaggerate who I was. And I'm sure to him at that stage in a career in broadcasting that I made sure he knew how important I was, and none of it was true.
Well, and it only took 14 years.
Yeah, 14. It's
and
true,
see, that's
man.
that's the big problem with early recovery and that sort of thing. All these people who get into recovery, I mean, they're looking at years and years of trying to get their credibility back. And that makes it so hard for people who are early in recovery to stay in recovery because, again, they're really swimming upstream. And so let's go back to Al-Anon and that sort of thing. It's very, very important for spouses and relatives and whomever to work an Al-Anon program when somebody's in early recovery, because one of the principles of Al-Anon is you don't want to be constantly checking up on the alcoholic. You don't want to constantly be challenging them about their credibility, all these sorts of things. In other words, the alcoholic's going to do what the alcoholic's going to do. The recovering alcoholic's going to do whatever the recovering alcoholic's going to do. And it's important to begin to learn how to let go of that person from that standpoint, where you're not trying to either control them, believe them or not believe them, all those sorts of things. The problem with people who are in a relationship with an alcoholic or an addict and that sort of thing with regard to this truthfulness thing is that when you're trying to gain your credibility back, there's still all of this water that has gone over the dam. And it's very important for people on both sides, both the addict alcoholic and the codependent, to begin to work on all of this trust. And it's a very, very difficult thing. And one of the things that I just want to say about that is that generally speaking, people without help, whether you're the addict or whether you're the person who is codependent, you generally stay in a different time warp than the person that you're in the relationship with. So when the alcoholic is in early recovery, for instance, and says, I didn't do this, the codependent, if they're not getting some help with Al-Anon or something like that, still in the past.
Right.
You never were truthful to me before, so why should I believe you now?
Right.
And that sort of thing. And so that really is a big problem for people who are trying to get into recovery, because they're still fighting this whole credibility gap.
It's as simple as this. If I were to be approached by you, I just ran it, and you looked at me in the eyes and said, are you okay? I didn't hear that. I heard, you're drinking.
Right.
You're drinking. You're drinking. I swear to you, that's what I would have heard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because so much in the past was conditioned behavior, and there's all this fear around. See, again, the alcoholic addict has fear for so many different reasons, and that's part of what they're medicating. But the codependent and the family members of people with addiction and alcoholic, they're full of fear as well. And their fear doesn't go away because, see, again, as the alcoholic addict, one advantage that you have is that you really do know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
for better or worse.
Right.
You really do know whether you're drinking or not.
Right.
You're the only one, however,
Right.
and everybody else is guessing.
Mm-hmm.
And so this whole thing of guessing, I mean, this would be a good book someday, you know what I mean? But the guesswork for the codependent and the family members of the alcoholic addict is a killer. And people continue to constantly wonder, is he drinking? Is he drugging? Is she drinking? Is she drugging? Or is she telling me the truth? All these sorts of things. And like I said, unless you're going to Al-Anon or getting some help with that question to sort of begin to let go of that question, then you're going to be constantly in turmoil.
That walking on eggshells. And that's why I have such tremendous respect for family members who do hang with us, because it's that minute growth, that minute day by day growth, going back to my father-in-law 14 years before he believed it.
Right.
You know.
And you can't blame him for taking
No.
14 years to believe it, but at the same time, that 14 years is that's a really long time. And see, you had to stay sober for 14 years.
Yeah.
So that's huge.
It is huge. And, you know, one thing I will say about him is that, you know, once we got to this point where he believed and understood, he told me something. He said, you know, I forgave you years and years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the big issue, forgiveness. You know, it all happened. There's no doubt about that. But he held no more contempt,
Mm-hmm.
you know, for my behavior. And I've always admired tremendously that ability to forgive like that.
Well, and again, all of that's part of the program. And that's why it's so important for us to try to help people understand that this is a process.
Can we go back and talk a little about fear? You know, you brought that up, and I believe that this is the real culprit. I'm going to go to my childhood. I was always afraid that we didn't have enough money. Dad was going to lose his job. And I was raised by folks who went through the Depression, you know, and they were very conservative and frightened about money and stability and things of that nature. And I felt that. I worried that the war. I was terribly worried about the Cold War was on. It wasn't a question if the Russians were coming to get us. It was when, you know, and I was petrified of that.
Right.
And it was that constant. And my mother, I remember distinctly saying, Jerry worries. I don't understand why he worries,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And now I know that wasn't worry, that was fear. Or correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think that's exactly right. Again, you see, it's very important for people to understand that fear, worry, anxiety, and that sort of thing is a systemic sort of a thing in a family. Some people are sort of the sponge of the family. And so clearly you probably absorbed more of that fear and anxiety. Now, there was plenty of fear and anxiety probably in your family to go around,
Mm-hmm.
but you became the repository of that.
Okay.
And you handled it for everybody else. And so you became kind of the identified fear holder, if that makes sense.
Jerry
and that works,
worries.
And
Jerry-
that works for everybody because, see, as long as you're worrying, then people have to worry less around you. And the same thing is true for all kinds of different roles in family systems and that sort of thing. And if we can talk about that a little bit, see, again, the alcoholic plays a role in families as well. See, as long as you're drinking, you've got a problem, and we all look pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the problems with getting people into sobriety and recovery and that sort of thing is that as soon as you do start getting sober and that sort of thing, you've just ruined it for the family in terms of them being able to play their roles.
Oh, yeah.
And this becomes a whole set of problems that, again, we need to continue to talk about here on the show.
In my own, I can remember going to treatment, getting sober, and I've been many times. And coming home, I was with Donna at the time, and I didn't know if we had any money. All I cared about was, do I have enough money to stay loaded, you know?
Sure.
But now I want to be involved in the family finances, and I can remember her saying, "Hands off, buddy.
Absolutely.
You know, you ain't coming near this. I've been handling it. I've been taking care of it. This is mine, and you need to stay away from it." And of course, what did I get from that? Resentment.
Right.
Which I'd like to talk about coming up too, if we could.
Very good. And all I'm saying is that this is a very, if you're a veteran or if you've been deployed or something like that, it's exactly the same sort of dynamic. In other words, a guy's or a gal's been out in the field at war for 6 months or a year or something like that, comes back into the family, and all the dynamics are different. But again, I know that we're sort of at the end of the segment.
We'll pick it up here. We'll pick it up again. There's a good reason for you to continue to listen. That's Dr. Joe Troncalli. I'm a sober alcoholic. My name is Jerry, and this is Trudge the Road from the recoveryforlifechannel.com.
You're listening to Trudge the Road. Coming up next, Rich and Jerry talk about AA and NA stereotypes. And later, Dr. Joe talks about patterns within the addicted family. It's on the way next on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
Welcome back to Trudge the Road. We are your hosts. I am Rich, a recovered drug addict.
I'm Jerry, a sober alcoholic.
And we want to thank our sponsor, livefrogged.com, firmly relying on God's grace every day. Check out their website, livefrog.com, and you can get one of those cool T-shirts and help out women with breast cancer.
We are a radio program dedicated to people who are suffering from the disease of addiction, addicted to alcohol and drugs. Not just you, ever as important, the family and friends, because we know you have a lot of questions, and we certainly hope that we can provide some answers to you as well as to a person who needs to deal with this disease. We're both successful in that endeavor. We've used a 12-step program, and that's what we believe in because it worked for us. If something else works for you, well, we're 100% for it. But Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous and the 12 steps of those programs have provided each one of us long-term recovery, and we're very grateful for it. And our only goal here, again, is to try to answer some of those questions, and we hope to maybe offer a solution.
We also have email addresses. A lot of folks have asked, how do people get a hold of us?
Yeah.
Pretty simple. Just go to our website, recoveryforlifechannel.com. recoveryforlifechannel.com, and then go to contact. And Jerry, your email's on there. Myself, Dr. Joe, and Matt, the producer. You can get a hold of any four of us.
Yeah, Matt's really responsible for everything, so you want to go to him first.
Yeah, if you have any complaints, make sure.
Matt.
Go to Matt. In the first segment, we talked about you living in a tree.
Tell me a little bit about my story, yeah.
And we talked about excuses that people make to not stop drinking. And we talk about how that day you fell out of the tree in Louisville, Kentucky at 4th and Oak, changed your life.
You know, let me plug where it really happened, a place called The Healing Place. As a matter of fact, you go to their website, it's thehealingplace.org. Just incredible. They took me under their wings, and I owe my total foundation of sobriety to The Healing Place in Louisville, Kentucky. Check them out.
I think there's a lot of stereotypes. We've talked about stereotypes before of the drug addict or the alcoholic, and there's a lot of people who have resisted going into the rooms of AA and NA because of the stereotype. I'm not a derelict.
I don't want to meet those people.
I'm not going in there. I'm not living on the streets. Why would I do that? I think you'd be surprised if you've never been to an AA or an NA meeting. Is a stereotype there? Of course it is. Are there people from other walks of life there? Of course there are. Are there business people there? Of course there are. Are there professionals there?
Oh, yeah.
Of course there are. I'm not talking about just treatment. I'm talking about people who live a professional life. Are there suburbanites there? Yes, there are. Are there city people there? Yes, there are. What am I getting at? There is every type of person from every walk of life who use these 12-step programs to help them find the happiness and the freedom that we've found as well. So take a step back, visit a room before you go ahead and you throw that whole stereotype out. Now, you have a collection of characters that you know from AA, and of course we don't. Anonymity is a big deal. So we're not going to use their real names, but tell us a little bit about some of the people that you know.
It's just been absolutely amazing. And the thing about AA is that when you walk in, there's going to be an automatic kind of a feeling, I believe, that everybody has a connectedness, if you would. And that's because you've walked into a group of people who understand your pain. I've said this before and over again. It's only another alcoholic who understands the pain that we suffer. Everybody outside knows about the pain we caused, but nobody really knows about what we have to go through except another alcoholic. So that feeling of understanding, I kind of think, is right there. Now, the people you're going to socialize with, they were the same people you partied with, if you want to really get down to it. And let me just echo what you said here, the culture of Alcoholics Anonymous is phenomenal because this disease does not discriminate, and neither does AA. You meet people from all walks of life, and there's a kind of, melting pot thing. As cultures all coming together, and it's just fantastic. Let me tell you, I was in Mexico one time on vacation, and was trying to hook up with an AA meeting, and I found one. And I got to it, and as soon as I walked in that room, they stopped and immediately started speaking English, to make it easy. That was just this kind of people. We just stopped immediately and just started. And they, in their culture of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I have had the pleasure of being at AA meetings kind of over the Western Hemisphere, and they have a socialization afterwards where they eat and talk, and that was just cool as heck because I just got sucked right into the culture. You see, right into the culture, and that's the beauty of AA is you can do this anywhere. Me and my buddy Ricky, who I got sober with, we used to take we called AA trips, and we'd go out. We liked the country, go out into the country, and just stop in these small towns and go to different AA meetings and meet different people, and just unbelievable things would happen. I specifically remember this one time being in just nowhere, North Carolina, and at a meeting, and it was in a county very poor, and the folks that were there, they didn't have a lot. And I'll never forget this man. He had the overalls on and a real scruffy look to his face, and it was a round robin, and it got to him, and he started talking about spirituality and how it works, and what came out of his mouth were some of the most amazing words that I've ever heard. Such perfect connectedness, such an ability to take something as complicated as a relationship with God and then explain it in terms where a dumb drunk like myself can understand. It was absolutely brilliant, and what that was God using this man to speak to everybody in the room as a tool. And the beauty of it is we get exposed to that. We get to experience that. Absolutely phenomenal. When I was living in Charleston, South Carolina, beautiful town, I used to try and do some 12-step work at the Salvation Army. And we used to have, and it's still there, it's Sunday morning, it's the beach meeting, and it's on Sullivan's Island in Charleston. Beautiful place. And it's going to be easy for you to find. Let me tell you how you find that meeting. Is there's only I guess maybe one or two police officers, and who at 7:30 in the morning is on Sunday, driving around. He knows that if you're driving around looking that you're going to that meeting, and he'll just pull up next to you and go, looking for the meeting, and take you right there, man. It's that kind of thing. But anyway, doing my 12-step work at the Salvation Army, trying to help out some guys who had, just like me, ended up on Skid Row, if you will, at least physically. And it was good for me. And on Sunday at the Salvation Army, they gave them a choice to either, stay for the services, the church services, or they could go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And a lot of them, preferred to try to find their spirituality, maybe in recovery, and maybe graduate, hopefully someday, into religion. And so I would provide a ride. Really, that was my role in this 12-step work. At the same time, Dr. R. Charleston's a very wealthy area. In this particular area, Sullivan's Island, the Isle of Palms, there's some real nice little hovels down there.
Sure,
Dr. R. Lived in New York and had a house there in Charleston, and he was a neurosurgeon, brain surgeon.
Right.
Neurosurgeon, right? And an acclaimed brain surgeon. But he also had this disease of addiction. There was no question. Of course, he had long-term recovery, and he was getting a little close to retirement at the time, so he and his wife were spending more time in Charleston at this home, and he would always be at that beach meeting. Wonderful guy, incredible recovery, but this brilliant man, brain surgeon, All right, now, at the same time, I'm bringing these cats from the Sally, who up until a week ago lived under a bridge. Like you, man.
Just like me.
Yeah, lived under a bridge. And would bring them to the meeting, and it was out on the beach right there at the ocean. It was beautiful. I miss it so much. Every time I get a chance, I go to it. And if you're a tourist, make sure you hit that one, if you're in AA. Anyway, long story short is I'm there with 3 or 4 bums, and there's Dr. R. And we're like, hey, good to see you.
Right.
And we discussed our spiritual growth, whatever it was, within the conversation of the meeting, and that was the basis of it. Really good meeting. And afterwards, when everybody's kind of chatting and saying goodbye and things, I look over and I see Dr. R. talking to one of my bums. Now this incredible brain surgeon has absolutely no idea that the man he's conversing with lived under a bridge drunk up until a week ago. And the drunk, the bum who lived under the bridge, has absolutely no idea he's talking to a world-renowned brain surgeon. Neither of them have that information. But what they had done was they had continued this conversation about spirituality and how it is affecting their lives. And it was a wonderful conversation between the two of them. And it was from the heart, and it was from the soul, and it was just their lives both were enriched by that. And to this day, neither of them know. You know, I believe that was a gift for me to witness that, to be able to see the culture of Alcoholics Anonymous and how God works through each and every one of us, whether we're a brain surgeon or whether we're the guy who lived on the street. And that's how it works. Why it works is because of all of these wonderful people who have done the 12 steps, and at that 12 step have realized that we've got to give back. It's all about helping other people.
Well, I think you touched on so many different key points there, and one of the words that really stuck out for me was connectedness.
Yeah.
And it's something that we had a guest a couple of months ago talk about connectedness and how you get connected and getting connected to the community and getting connected to people who may not live the same lifestyle you are, but we are all connected by one thing, and that is the disease that we have of addiction, because I am a drug addict. So if you'd like to talk to Jerry or myself about any of this, or Matt or Dr. Joe, just go to our website, recoveryforlifechannel.com, and hit the contacts up there. Click on that, and our email addresses will come down. You can shoot us a note.
Please, we would really, really love to hear from you.
Absolutely. And don't forget our sponsor, livefrogged.com, firmly relying on God's grace every day. Go there, get yourself a T-shirt, and really help out a great cause, and that is helping women who suffer from the disease of breast cancer.
All right, man. Thank you, Rich.
Hey, thank you. Dr. Joe is coming up here in just a few minutes. This is Trudge the Road.
You're listening to Trudge the Road. Coming up in our final segment, Dr. Joe and Jerry discuss behavior patterns in the addicted family. It's next on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Trudge the Road. My name is Jerry. I am a sober alcoholic. Trudge the Road is a program dedicated to folks like me who are addicted to drugs and alcohol, and ever more importantly, probably the family and friends, because we know that you have got so many questions and maybe you're looking for a solution. And if you are in the recovering community, I think you're just going to love what we do here. God bless you and welcome aboard. 12 steps is what we follow and use as a guideline here for Trudge the Road. Our expert advice comes from Dr. Joseph Troncalli. Dr. Joe is with me right now and is a physician who is not addicted to drugs or alcohol, but has chosen to use the pathway of his career to bring us some relief and some answers, and we really do appreciate that. Dr. Joe, the family, of course, and the family system and dynamics is incredibly important because we're in there. I'll give you an example. I told a psychologist one time, I think I come from a dysfunctional family, and he said, I guarantee you did because you're in it. And in my own family, I was telling you, and we were just stricken with this disease. Everybody had it. And to this day, it is absolutely amazing to me. I'm a baby boomer raised in the 60s and 70s that the family stayed together, considering there was such a tremendous, level of alcoholism. But we still went to Mass every Sunday. And on the outside of our house, I'll tell you, our lawn was always perfect, and everything looked really good. And there was love in my family. I know it, and I was telling you of the stress that I feel of not having been able to make amends to these people, because when they died, I was still right in the middle of my addiction. But I was that one who you said, kind of absorbed the worry of the family and was described as a worrier, and that was kind of my role in the family. And to give you just an example, and I started so young with this disease, and I've said it before, the very first time alcohol worked for me, when I was about the age of 12, all that worry went away. Everything was just, I wasn't drunk, I wasn't crazy, I was okay. I took a breath, it was frankly spiritual, it was all gone. And I know today that that was the medicine I was taking. I've always thought that alcoholism should be called the disease of fear, and alcohol is our medicine. But so with that role in my family, my first question, and one that I've always wondered, how did we stay together as long as we did?
Well, I think that if you look at your family history and that sort of thing, the fact that you had spiritual foundation for your family.
We did.
And that sort of thing contributes to allowing you to stay together and those sorts of things. And there's probably a tradition of marriages staying together, all those sorts of things.
Divorce was, we were Irish Catholics.
Right.
That was taboo.
You couldn't do that sort of thing. But here's the thing. It's really important, and I think your family is a great example, is that alcoholism and addiction is a disease. It's not like some sort of a moral failure. So the fact that your family was riddled with alcoholism didn't make your family bad people. It just made things difficult because all of these dynamics were going on at the same time. So you were living life in the midst of the disease of alcoholism. Again, because alcoholism's a genetic and a family disease. Let's just say that your family had been riddled with diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
That would have created all kinds of stresses on your family in a different sort of a way, but it would have been the same sort of thing. It wouldn't have changed like how your family looked at life. It wouldn't have been, it was just another thing in the road. It would be a huge bump in the road, so to speak, that you would have to live with. So alcoholism in some ways is similar. It's not exactly the same, obviously, because there's other behavioral things, which again, we've talked about in the past. What I would like to say about family dynamics in alcoholism is that people in all families, whether there's alcoholism or not, tend to play certain roles. And for instance, your father was an alcoholic, correct?
Yes, he was.
And so your father, by definition, as being an alcoholic, would have been what we would call the distancer in the family. So he could distance into work, or he could distance into different sorts of things, whether it was alcohol, work. Some people play a lot of golf. Some people do this, that, or the other. But anyway, he would have been the person who was kind of the absentee person. He had a place where he had to bring home the bread and all that sort of stuff. But in a classic alcoholic family, what would happen is that he would drink, but he was one of those responsible alcoholics that was doing sort of the right thing by his family.
The
right?
Protestant work ethic was foremost, you know.
So anyway, so he was doing that, and then your mom was probably sort of taking care of everybody and everything.
Yeah.
So she was kind of the busy bee, and she was the glue that kind of helped things together emotionally. But she was always sort of pursuing your dad, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so basically you had the pursuer and the distancer. So you had your dad who was the distancer, you had your mom who was the pursuer, and so she would always move towards your dad emotionally. Your dad would always move away from people because, as the saying goes, alcoholics are allergic to closeness. So that's their allergy. So if they are able to be close to people, as soon as they start getting close to people, then they have to move away because it's too frightening for them. And this is the problem for people, as an underlying problem for alcoholics and addicts is that when people begin to move towards them in some way, they just are not able to tolerate it very well emotionally. And so they use alcohol as a way to be able to move towards people because they have to sort of medicate that fear and that allergy of closeness so that they can join with people. So your dad probably, again, I'm just fantasizing about this, but you can fill in the blanks.
Absolutely.
But probably to be able to meet your mom and to be able to have a relationship with your mom, he probably had to drink to kind of make that work at some level because emotionally he couldn't probably, stay in a relationship with her. So he had to overcome that fear of intimacy.
Right. I see it now, and I see it certainly in myself. And I recall as a child, my mother saying, "Call the bar and tell your daddy to come home." You know, she didn't want to do it.
Which brings us to another family system thing, which is called triangles. So
Explain.
because your mom had to get you to call the bar, she didn't call the bar.
Right, I did.
You called the bar, and so you by definition became the child of an alcoholic. And so, by definition, you eventually became the adult child of an alcoholic. And so, adult children of alcoholics tend to be very much able to handle things at a certain level, but they're also generally very codependent. They always want to please people. They want to be able to kind of be approved. And so everybody that grows...
It's at this stage, Doctor, I want to say, are you talking about me? Are you, all right.
Well, I get this a lot because, again, that's how...
That's it. I'll be honest. I promise to be honest. That's, to this day, I think... I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. I'm just saying that that I'm not psychoanalyzing you. I'm just telling you how it is.
It's it.
Yeah, that's the way it is. So again, you call the bar. You said, Dad, did you get him on the phone directly, or did you talk to the bartender?
It was my family owned the bar.
Oh, okay. Well, that's easy. So you got the word to your dad.
Right, I got it. Or he would answer, and you would think that I'm going to tell this horror story about how Daddy would come home drunk and tear everything up. Absolutely not.
No.
He would come home, and his behavior, I don't ever recall him striking me.
Right.
So there was no violence or anything of that nature.
Yeah, and so
but
there's
that distance was there.
Yes, yes, and so again, but I'm saying that for him to sort of tolerate being around the family, he had to have a few under his belt.
Yes.
And so this was his way of being able to see. In other words, there's sort of an ambient level of tension and anxiety in alcoholic families. Well, like all families, but especially in alcoholic families. And so your dad self-medicated. Your mom chased the kids around and told everybody what to do.
That's it.
And everybody basically learned their roles. And again, I don't even know much about your family, but if you had like an older sister or somebody like that, then she would learn how to be a good codependent and rule the roost and be in charge of everybody and tell everybody what to do. And all the younger kids would learn how to not like her and resent her telling everybody what to do and all these sorts of things. And see, those are all predictable patterns, and then they repeat themselves. And then, like I said, see, again, alcoholism is a genetic disease. So a number of people in your family, you have enough kids in your family, then some people are going to be alcoholic, and then they're going to basically repeat all of these same sorts of patterns. And you get these sorts of things. And so in your family, again, going back to your situation, you're the person who is able to be the adult child now of an alcoholic. You're the repository of a lot of anxiety. You're the person who's trying to please everybody. And so what medicates you, you find out when you're very young that when you drank, you were medicated properly. And see, there's tons of people out there right now that do this either through alcohol or they do it through drugs, even legal drugs. There's a lot of people who are on, say, benzodiazepines, which is really freeze-dried alcohol.
Your Valium family.
Yeah, Valium.
Right.
Yeah, and so, and again, I'm not criticizing anybody, and I'm not criticizing those drugs. Those drugs work marvelously for some people. But the point is that they have to have those drugs basically on board to feel normal. And until they begin to feel normal, then all of those same fears come up, all those dark sorts of things happen in your brain, and you're always kind of constantly in the same patterns in your family with, again, like I said, going back to your family, I'm sure that as soon as something triggered like your mom or your dad, there would be a very predictable mechanism of how things went.
Oh, yeah. Silent treatment was a big one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So silence is one thing, and again, like I said, so your mom knew what time your dad should be home.
Mm-hmm.
So your mom talks to you, you call your dad comes home, and then all these sort of predictable things happen.
Nonverbal communication, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And your mom was probably resentful of your dad's drinking and being at the bar, all these sorts of things. But nobody talked about that, right?
No.
It wouldn't come up because they knew that as soon as that came, that would be too toxic.
That's going to be a problem if you do that.
Right. And see, that's the problem with alcoholic families. It's almost impossible to surface toxic issues because as soon as you really call a spade, for instance, and say, I think you're drinking too much. Oh, I'm not drinking too much, and that precipitates an argument. And then you would probably, as the kid, jump in and say, I have a stomach ache.
I would. Anything to deflect that, and I was great at it.
Right. And so you could become...
Even if it was inappropriate behavior.
Absolutely. Especially if it's inappropriate. Yeah. That works even better.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, but see, again, you could become the symptom bearer in the sense that you could be sick, you could act out, you could be the bad kid or whatever, so then everybody could deflect all of that stuff. Here. But the real issue, the elephant in the room, was the alcoholism. But nobody would talk about that. So you had to be sick, crazy, alcoholic yourself, whatever, so that they wouldn't have to deal with their own issues.
We'll talk more about that coming up. You're brilliant. Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you so much to our sponsor, livefrog.com. That's firmly relying on God's grace every day. It's about women who suffer from breast cancer, and we appreciate them being here and anything we can do to help. That's it for this episode of Trudge the Road. For Rich and for Dr. Troncalli and for Matt, our producer, God bless. Thank you all so very much, and we'll see you next week here on Trudge the Road from recoveryforlifechannel.com.
You've been listening to Trudge the Road, brought to you by LiveFrogged.com. LiveFrogged stands for firmly relying on God's grace every day. That's LiveFrogged.com. Thanks for joining us this week for Trudge the Road, and be listening next week at the same time on this great radio station, which is part of the Trudge the Road radio network.